Mirasee.
Effective courses shouldn't be about just providing solutions, but about helping people to understand the problems and the motivation to solve the problems in the first place. And really drawing on those pieces that comes from more of, you could argue, from a coaching perspective, and making sure to bring that perspective into course design.
Hello and welcome to Course Lab, the show that teaches creators like you how to make better online courses. I'm Ari Eni, the Director of Growth at Mirasee, and I'm here with my co-host, Abe Crystal, the co-founder of Rizuku.
Hey there, Ari.
In each episode of Course Lab, we showcase a course and creator who is doing something really interesting, either with the architecture of their course or the business model behind it, or both. Today, we welcome Penny Vandenberg to the show. She is a military veteran with 25 years of service, including a decade as a conflict management coach, where she saw firsthand the transformative power of coaching. With a background in psychology and specialized training in mediation and life coaching, Penny founded Gottaminute in 2023 to empower introverts through coaching and education. Her mission is to help introverts build deeper self-connections, boost confidence, and ensure their voices and ideas are heard. Welcome, Penny. We're really glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So the way that I always kick off these interviews is by asking, could you give us a 30,000-foot view of yourself and how you came to the world of online courses?
Well, it's a little bit of a curly journey. It really started in 2006 when I was in the military and I had an opportunity to be working at the Dispute Resolution Center, and it dealt with workplace conflict. And I was working in that organization in an administrative role, and I had an opportunity to take their Resolving Conflict Effectively course. And it really started my journey of where I am today. I learned a lot about communication skills and how to use them more effectively. I was naturally an avoider, and it prompted me to take some mediation courses, conflict management course, and jump 10 years later in 2016, I was again back in this organization as a trainer promoter. So I was actually instructing on the course that I took 10 years earlier and also helping with product creation and development. Our organization was going through a transition. Because of my training, I had an opportunity to be a conflict management coach for Department of National Defense employees and members. And it was that experience that really solidified for me that coaching was where I wanted to go. I really enjoyed the one-on-one conversations. They got deep and rich and fruitful. I could see the positive impact it was having for people around the challenges they were having in the workplace, and saw that it also was something that was supporting not only what was going on in the workplace, but it helped relationships outside of the workplace. So after I retired from the military in 2022, I decided to go back to university. So I went to University of California, Davis, and completed my life coaching certification. And so that has brought me from exposure to Dr. Irina O'Brien into Mirasee. And because in some of the conversation I was having with women, having an opportunity to be in a small group and working together in a small group and learning stuff in a supportive way was something that they desired. So that brought me to Mirasee and creating a course around what I was hearing they were wanting and needing.
Awesome. Could you tell us more about the course that you ended up developing, that you were working on to give them what they were wanting?
Yeah, so beyond being a small cohort, I would work alongside with the individuals. There's 5 modules, and the first 3 modules are really focused on the inner work. Because what I was hearing, there was a lot of self-doubt and the inner critic was coming out. So working on the awareness piece, where they are in their comfort zone, where they are on the edge of that fear zone, and what do they want to do next. And getting into how the brain and body are influencing the way that they're showing up. And then looking at the core and acquired values, because behaviors are based on those values. If we're basing our behaviors on acquired values more than our core values, there's going to be a misalignment. When we have that alignment, we can show up more authentically. So those first 3 models are really the inner work. And then the last couple modules are more the outer work. So looking at the communication skills that can help them in communicating assertively with those that they're having conversations with.
Awesome. So, something that you were mentioning earlier is that one thing that really attracted you to coaching is that ability to work with people one on one and have those kind of deeper relationships, which isn't necessarily how it works in a course. I'm curious, what have you brought from your coaching experience and kind of things that you liked about coaching to the way that you're going to be delivering this course?
It's the coaching mindset, really. It's going to be having those open dialogue and asking those questions that's going to allow the person to think more deeply and gain insights that's going to support them in their own journey. I'm not in their shoes. I don't have those experiences. So, what they put in place is going to be applicable for them. I will be providing a foundation of information that I can share and then providing that safe space that we can do some practice because we can understand theory and everything, but the actual application can take a little bit of practice. Providing that safe space for them to practice and receive feedback that's going to help for their growth.
That's great. And so you mentioned that you aren't in their shoes, so you haven't had those same experiences. Can you talk a little bit more about your experience and what you've learned for yourself and what you've learned in general versus their experiences and how you're going to be supporting them in the course? The thing that I'm curious about is that difference between your experience in life and the way that you deal with your own experiences versus the way that they're dealing with theirs. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that many course creators often believe that they need to have experienced whatever it is that they want to be teaching, whereas that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. So I'm curious about your thoughts about that.
So, as I had mentioned earlier, I was naturally an avoider. I would either avoid a conflict or go into an accommodation type of framework where my needs weren't being really expressed. And in talking with the women that I'm going to be serving, this is the same sort of narrative that I'm hearing. There's self doubt. They don't want to be necessarily expressing themselves because of concern of how other people would judge them. And so working on this inner piece for them and then providing them the framework, there's templates that are easy to learn to be able to communicate those things that are important to them, those wants and those needs in an assertive way. People often get aggressive and assertive mixed up. That assertive piece is something where they're able to express their needs and wants, as well as hearing what the other person is wanting and needing as well. So it's a power with type of approach, whereas aggressive is more of a power over. So it's an opportunity for them to gain the confidence to understand what's important to them so that when they're in those conversations, they're able to really align what they want to say with who they are and what's important to them.
And is part of the process working with them over a longer term? Because this is something that I'm sure they can learn the theory. And I know you said there's also going to be practice. It's not just going to be learning, it's going to be actually implementing. And it's still a big shift.
Yeah, and with these, as you hear them, the soft skills, it's something that requires continual practice and taking those low risks opportunities. Maybe that's with somebody that they're really familiar with or comfortable with. Maybe it's a partner, a colleague, a dear friend. Maybe it's even just listening to the radio or watching TV and practicing and then moving that out into the world in these day-to-day type of activities at the grocery store or whatever, and then working towards those important conversations. So they will have had that experience and to look back and say, yeah, I can do this. And then when those important conversations come, it's going to be a lot easier. So it's a life journey of practice to get to where you feel comfortable. Some of these communication skills, when you're starting them, they're going to feel clunky, they're going to feel awkward. And so you kind of have to work on making them your own. this course is going to be that starting point. And then, should people want to work one on one, we can do that in a coaching opportunity. This is just like a launching pad for them to have some initial foundations for communicating in a more assertive way that maybe they haven't been doing in the past.
Excellent. So they can learn those foundational skills, but then if they need additional support over longer terms, they can get that with you through one-on-one coaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Abe, any questions coming up for you?
I guess it's just always interesting to hear what do you see as the key, like learning challenges for your students? What is the most difficult for them to learn or apply? And how are you thinking about addressing that?
I think for the inner work, it's those thoughts that are becoming a barrier for trying something new or seeing that what they have as an opinion is worthy. So it's working on a thought ladder to change that thought to something more upgraded, a goal thought. The other thing that comes up is probably that assertive communication, using the model and just getting comfortable with practicing it. Oftentimes, when we're in difficult conversations, it's very easy to point the finger that it's the other person. And that can be like a verbal finger pointing of a you. And there's an important aspect when we're having any kind of conversation is to also do some reflection as to what am I maybe doing or not doing? How am I showing up that could be contributing to the situation? So, some reflective piece on that. And then, when something isn't necessarily going the way somebody had hoped, it's an opportunity for them to practice how they're being impacted without using that, you made me do this, or you made me feel like that, taking that accountability on how it's impacting them and to be able to express that in a way that does not put the blame on the other person.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, a common challenge from a course design or learning design perspective is people like they might understand and approach it conceptually, but then they don't actually do it, right? Or they don't actually change their behavior. Just curious if you have thoughts about how you think about helping people to actually shift their approach and shift their behavior.
Well, I think the one thing is that awareness, people won't change until they become aware of it. And even within coaching, there are times when you need to challenge people, things that you might be seeing, sensing, and bring this forward because the other individual may not be aware. So, practicing these assertive communication skills, you're going to be able to provide some feedback as to, you know, what you're seeing. Maybe there's a tone that could potentially be considered something that the other person might see as aggressive, or maybe there's a micro expression that's happening, like a rolling of the eyes. Those are all ways that people communicate. It's not just through the words. So, aligning the words, the paraverbal, the nonverbal is going to enhance a way of communicating effectively so that there's not going to be that mixed message coming. That's where I can support people in ensuring that when they're communicating, all those things are being aligned.
Other lessons learned or things that you have discovered through the process of talking to clients and course creation that you think might be interesting to share with other course creators who are going on a similar journey?
I think that it's constant research in the sense that you might have a starting foundation, and then through further conversations and iterations, you're going to be changing and adapting your course according to what the needs are.
Mhm.
I currently have 5 modules, but over the next year, I don't know how many additions might be necessary to make sure that people are getting exactly what they're wanting or needing. I just finished one iteration of it and I've already made some updates. So they'll be bringing that out in the spring. So I think with course creation, it's not static. New research comes in, new needs come up. So it's being adaptable and flexible to what people are wanting or needing.
So something that's coming up for me, I'm curious about, based on this conversation and your history, you have very deep expertise in this topic and you're keeping up with the research. You have all this breadth of knowledge. I'm sure just a fraction of that is in the course, which makes total sense. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be. I'm curious because I feel like a lot of experts often struggle with is they want to put everything in the course that they're building. They want to equip the people they're working with as much knowledge as possible. So what was the process for you to narrow that down? How did you decide what was and wasn't important for that first iteration, understanding that this is not the final iteration, but for now?
Yeah, I think it's got to be some quick wins and something that's easy for people to get those wins is the important thing. I've been a student in many different courses, and one thing is overwhelm if you get too much information coming in. So, giving those small pieces, those small nuggets where they can practice and build on and gain confidence is going to be that launching pad for further growth and development.
Abe, any last questions?
No, I think that's all I have, unless Penny, there was anything you wanted to mention or share that you think would be helpful for people.
Well, I will be offering this course right after spring break in March. Going to be having a small cohort of women. I've also created a free resource for the listeners of this podcast. Thank you for having given me the opportunity to have time with both of you and have a conversation.
Absolutely. And so that resource will be in our show notes. But if people want to just go and learn more about you, where should they go?
They can go to www.gottaminute, that's GOTTAMINUTE.ca.
All right. Awesome. Penny, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing from your experience.
Thank you.
Now stick around for my favorite part of the show, where Abe and Ari will pull out the best takeaways for you to apply to your course.
All right, Ari, time for the debrief with Penny. Very, very interesting topic, right? A lot of people struggle with this area of confidence, listening, communicating effectively, and just kind of pushing their own needs under the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be a huge challenge for many people, and I appreciate Penny tackling this and supporting people on it.
I think the hard thing about quote unquote soft skills like this is they're actually extremely difficult to learn and apply. There's really nothing soft about the process of learning them. How do you do that, right? And so one piece I think people can take away from this is the importance of like self-awareness and reflection and integrating those into the learning experience. It's not just about pushing techniques at people, even if those techniques are really effective. They really need to start from more of a point of introspection and self-awareness that could then motivate them to be interested in the techniques and applying them.
Right. Noticing the instances where they are pushing their needs below the surface, because at this point, they're probably just doing it automatically without noticing.
I mean, it really leads to an important theme, which is that effective courses shouldn't be about just providing solutions, but about helping people to understand the problems and the motivation to solve the problems in the first place. And really drawing on those pieces, that comes from more of, you could argue, from a coaching perspective, and making sure to bring that perspective into course design.
The course building. Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, from there, going through that process, the scaffolding of step by step, how to implement and how to work your way up to bigger and bigger challenges, but can't know where to implement if you're not noticing where the problem is.
And then the final piece that she mentioned that I thought was useful is the importance of evolution and iteration. And if your approach is grounded in some sort of like scientific field or research base, that's not a static thing, right? So if you have an approach based on, say, positive psychology, that's a field that's evolved a lot over the last several years.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about your course evolving based on what is known in the broader field or area that you work in addition to, the standard principles of iteratively developing your course based on client feedback and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, those were my bullet points.
Yeah, I feel like, things that we've talked about in the past, just making sure that people are getting those quick wins whenever it's something that's related to a change in behavior. So just the build up towards that, always important to remember, and how important to remember how difficult it can be to create that behavior change and just approach it with a lot of thought and care. All right, awesome.
All right. Penny Vandenberg is the founder of Gottaminute, and she aims to empower introverts through coaching and education. You can read more about her and her course at gottaminute.ca. That's GOTTAMINUTE.ca. She's also offering our listeners a free conversation guide, and you'll find the links to her website and her resource in the show notes. Thank you for listening to Course Lab. I'm Abe Crystal, co-founder and CEO of Zuku, here with my co-host Ari. Course Lab is part of the Mirasee FM podcast network, which also includes such shows as Once Upon a Business and Making It. And if you don't want to miss the excellent episodes coming up on Course Lab, follow us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you're enjoying the show, please go ahead and leave us a starred review. It really does make a difference. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. All right, Ari, who do we have coming on the show next week?
Next, we have Patricia Peters. She is a modern shaman, former athlete, and founder of Women Unlimited International. She focuses her program on women's inner liberation, empowerment, and self-actualization, grounding them in ancient wisdom and neuroscience. I'm really excited about the conversation with her.
I don't know much about any of those areas, so we'll have a lot to learn.
Absolutely.